Distribution provided by Cloud Sigma, the cloud that adapts to you.
Today's episode of This Week in Startups is brought to you by GoToMeeting. Sign up for GoToMeeting using promo code TWiST to begin your free trial.
Hey everybody, it's Jason Calacanis, and this is not This Week in Startups. This is a student interviewing me. Some MBA student emailed me out of the blue and said, listen, I'm a fan of the show, I'm an entrepreneur, I've got an assignment, can I interview you? And I said, of course. Because I get dozens of these requests a month, and I try to say yes to a couple of them, because when I was a nobody coming up in the world, I sent those emails out, I hustled, and I got no responses. But then I would get one or two responses, and I always remember those people, the Esther Dysons, the John Brockmans, the Andrew Rochers, the Douglas Rushkoffs of the world, the people when I was coming up who made time for me. And so now that I'm a big macha, is that how you say it? Macha? I gotta get the throat thing on. But hey, listen, now I'm a big shot. Angel investor, I run the largest conference in technology, got the most popular podcast in the startup business. Hey, I got to make some time for other people, right? That's a little bit of an egomaniacal approach, but it is true. And so you picked me. What's the story? Who are you, and what's the story here? Explain to the audience what's going on.
My name is David Kawata. I am an executive.
Kawata. Are you Hawaiian or Hawaiian Japanese?
Yeah, Hapa.
You're Hawaiian Japanese, I guessed it.
Well, it's Japanese and Austrian, actually.
Yeah. But you grew up in Hawaii?
I actually grew up in Southern California.
Oh, okay. Right. So tell me your last name again. It's
Kawata.
Kawata.
Yes.
What does it mean?
It's a
you
family,
don't know?
Yeah, no, it's a family name. And
Kawata?
Yes, sir.
It sounds like Hawaiian, though.
There's a lot, There's a lot of origin there.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, keep going.
So I'm an executive MBA student at University of Southern California.
Executive MBA means you go at night.
I go 2 days full-time every other week.
Got it.
For about 2 years, and I'll graduate in a few weeks.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And it's an interesting assignment. We're in the MBA program looking at entrepreneurship. Mm-hmm. A lot of my classmates are 15, 20 years in, vice presidents, owners of companies. Mm-hmm. And then they're looking either to go to the next level or go on to another chapter of their life. And so entrepreneurship has a lot of different meanings. There's corporate entrepreneurship, there's brick and mortar, and then obviously the tech and the startup end. Yeah. The reason why I called you or reached out to you is that you have so many different perspectives as a startup yourself, as doing it yourself, as someone that had a rise and then had a wall, came back.
Falls.
Yeah, you reinvented yourself, had a big payout. Then went corporate with the AOL and try to see the other side of entrepreneurship inside a different view lens. Yep. And then Sequoia Capital went there for a moment in time. Yep. So you have different point of views.
I've tried a lot of things.
And then you went for the fences again with Mahalo and angel investing. So now you're judging and you're also championing. Yep. And then you basically get to meet awesome people all the time. And you've always been the connector. And I thought, wow, there's not too many people that have that type of perspective on entrepreneurship. And so I really appreciate your opportunity here.
Great. Okay, so I agree with your assessment. You picked the best possible person to interview. I'm going to go ahead and go out and live here and say, wow, that's great. I like that. Okay, sure. You flattered me. Now ask me the tough question. Well, you must have hard questions there if you butter me up that much. Let's hear them.
Well, they're true, right? I just read your bio, and that's what it is. So I don't know about tough questions, but different perspectives. Okay. And one of the interesting things being here in Los Angeles, outside of Silicon Valley, be kind of an outsider as far as technology goes. Yep. You started in New York. Yep. You started in Brooklyn. Yep. Blue collar. Your mom was a nurse, a bartender dad. Yep. You basically hustled as a kid. Yep. Nowhere near technology as I could see it.
No. I got my first computer in the 80s, PC Junior, and I went to computer camp when I was probably 10 years old in 1980, and I got to play with like TRS-80s and all kinds of like really terrible computers, but learned how to program BASIC and these kind of things. And we used to have a box. They'd have a box at the summer camp, and even when I went on to high school, which would have programming cards. And you'd pick a card, and you'd bring it over to your desk, and you'd sit it there, and you'd type it in, and then you hit run. I thought that's pretty clever. And so then I got the computer, and then I started doing consulting work, building databases for people when I was 14, 15 years old. The first gig was I built a database for my mom, the medical practice my mom worked at as a nurse. Right. And so that was like, oh, wow, we built a database where we can keep all the customers in it. And it was like a CRM database. And, just did stuff like that.
But you went to Fordham as a psych major.
Yeah, I was going for computer science and psychology. And the computer science stuff was so old that they were sort of asking me questions about my day job because I couldn't afford to go during the day, I had to work full time, so I was a waiter, a busboy, what they call a bar back, if you've heard of that.
What's that?
Is a bar back is you carry buckets of ice and beer, and you put the beer in the ice for 12 hours. From you get there at 4 or 5, set the bar up, and you leave at 4 or 5, and it's just absolutely back-breaking labor.
I've done it.
You've done it.
I have.
You've been a bar back. It's brutal.
It's fun,
but you get 10% of the cup, so you could wind up making $125 or something. But I went to school at night, and I just was fascinated, more interested in psychology. Thought I would actually go on to forensic or industrial organizational psych, IO psych. I always thought that was more interesting.
So what was the event or events that led you to Silicon Valley?
Well, I was doing networking before the internet was a commercial kind of entity. So before the web in the late 80s and early 90s, people would set up Novell networks, Banyan Vines. They would take computers and connect them by token ring or Ethernet cables. And that was primarily used for file sharing inside of organizations. Then some organizations added email, but the email would only work in the building. There was no email gateway to go out of the building. So just inside of a law firm, they would have document management, they would have email, and they'd have some file sharing. And so I did that. I set up those computer networks. But then the internet happened, and it was like, ooh, wow. When we started seeing the internet at college and being able to do Gopher and sending and files and FTP and stuff, it was like, wow, this is pretty interesting. And then Mosaic came out in 93, which was the first web browser that Mark Andreessen worked on. And that was when you just sort of realized it was all going to change. But I had done also dial-up bulletin board systems in the 80s where we would dial in at 300 or 1200 baud over a modem to one computer. And you would go try and call into the same computer. And unless they had 2 modems on the computer, you get a busy signal. Then I would download a file, like typically a stolen game, or I'd upload the stolen game. It would take 2 or 3 hours to upload it. Then you would log in, and you would have your phone on auto dial. You'd log in at 1 in the morning and download the file, and then leave me a message. And we'd go back and forth like that. And so, yeah, I did bulletin board systems. So I knew all that was happening. And then the internet happened, and I started a magazine about it. Okay, listen. This is the easiest ad read for me to do in the world. GoToMeeting, meeting is believing. Look, I'm not going to even break my eye contact. I use GoToMeeting multiple times a week. And by multiple, I mean probably a dozen. 6 to 12 times a week for the last 4, 5, 6 years, I have used GoToMeeting. Meeting is believing. I can connect to GoToMeeting on my iPad, my iPhone, any device, any computer. It uses HD faces. I can switch the controls from me to another person. I can dial in on the phone, or I can use VoIP. Voice over IP, right? I can use my speaker and my headphones. And you know what? Sometimes during a call, my phone has problems. My phone battery dies, whatever. And then I switch over to my computer. My computer has a problem. The Wi-Fi, wherever I am, the hotel, the airport lounge, is FooBar. Look it up, FooBar. Can't say it on the program or else I have to put something in the swear jar. But things can go FooBar, and you just gracefully, and they probably didn't even put this in the ad read for me. But man, switching between dialing in on a phone and going to VoIP, just boop, click, done. And sharing who's the presenter, click, doop, done. It's so easy to use. And I can make you the presenter, and then I can present your computer, and I can have control of it. I can record the call. There's just a million great features, and it always works, and it's always stable, and it's always perfect. Flawless. You just send somebody a URL. They click on that URL, or you give the meeting ID, and it works. And the meeting starts on time. And you know what? If you want to be a professional, you want your meeting to start on time. So go to GoToMeeting, and click the Try It Free button. Use the promo code TWiST. Try It Free button. Use the promo code TWiST. Meeting is believing. Please go sign up for free and use that TWiST. Use that TWiST code. It's very, very important. They've been sponsoring this program for 3 years plus. And I really love the product, and I really love them for supporting the entrepreneurs on this program. Meeting is believing, and it's the one solution you need. And you know what? You want to be professional. Those free options, you get what you pay for. The meetings never start on time. They always have quality issues. And with all the dedicated service, hardware, resources, and software that these guys and gals over at GoToMeeting have put to work, there's a reason they got 9.6 out of 10 on web conferencing awards. They're just awesome at what they do. And you can use any device. You can even be the presenter from your iPad, which is pretty crazy. I'm going to probably do that when I'm at the beach with my daughter this summer. HD Face is a great feature as well. People used to spend $250,000 putting in these systems to their conference rooms, and now you get GoToMeeting at under 1% of that cost. It's unbelievable. Drop everything and sign up right now for GoToMeeting. Meeting is believing. Thanks again, GoToMeeting.
Okay, so I consider you a journalist, and you've labeled yourself a journalist. You consider yourself a lot of things, and I wanted to ask, the event of reporting on this passion, this wave. Was there an event or?
Yeah, there was. There was an event when I became a journalist. There were two events. One, I was working for a guy named Mike Savino, who's still a friend today. He was a judge at the last Launch Festival. And we were doing local area networking, LANs. And I worked at a company called LAN Systems, which is backed by venture capitalists. So I was like, wow, there's people who invested in this. And I was like, whoa, this is really interesting. Kid from Brooklyn making $50,000 a year at the age of 23 years old. 45,000 actually, and when I went to work for Sony, I think I got to 55 or 60,000. I was like, this is incredible. Like, I am building local area networks. So I said, I'm going to make a book, The Guide to Local Area Networks. And so I went in PageMaker and I started writing about it, and it was like almost like the idiot's guide to it. And I started showing it to people, like, look, I'm writing a book, and I had a designer, an illustrator, start illustrating it. I never published it, but there was an illustrator who worked at the company who illustrated it for me. And I just showed the mock-ups to people, but I didn't know anybody who printed books, so I couldn't do it. But then I was out at a party with my then girlfriend in the basement of Barney's on 18th Street. I remember it was like yesterday, and there was a magazine in New York that was very popular called Paper Magazine. And I met David Hershowitz, the editor of Paper Magazine, and Trixie introduced me to him. She worked at German magazines. And magazines and zines were sort of how people communicated back then. And zines were like blogs. You know, this idea that a zine, for people who don't know, is you print to 16 pages or 32 pages, fold it in half, put a staple on it, and you'd sell it at Tower Records for $5 or $10. And you would do a direct deal with them to put it there. And so people made their little magazines to get their words out in the world. And so I was talking to him about the internet. He knew what it was, and he said, would you write a column for Paper Magazine about it? And I started a magazine called Cyber Surfers, Silicon Alley. And I was the Cyber Surfer because that was my handle for 10 years online, the Cyber Surfer, like Silver Surfer, the Marvel character. I just put cyber there because that's how we refer to the internet. So I was the Cyber Surfer, and I wrote something called Silicon Alley, which was silly, S-I-L-L-Y, C-O-N, Alley, about the tech scene in New York. I did about 5 or 10 columns for Paper Magazine, and I think he paid me $300, which to me was incredible because I was writing 600-700 words, and he got $300. It was almost $1 a word sometimes. And they printed it. And that was my first paid writing gig. And
what was your passion to write about other people's ventures? That's basically what you did, correct?
Yeah, I was passionate. Yeah, and also explaining the internet to people, just explaining to them the stuff. Well, I was passionate. I loved Paper Magazine, and I loved publishing. I thought that was super cool. And I knew the technology. And I thought this would be interesting to write stuff because I actually really thought I could get into a lot of parties. Because if I was a Paper Magazine columnist, Paper Magazine would be like today saying, God, I don't know what the coolest thing is, but like, I don't know if people would say like working for Gawker is cool, but because they're kind of negative sometimes. But I'm trying to think about if you work for Engadget and you went to a technology party, people would be like, or a gadget party, they'd be like, oh, wow, you work for Engadget. Like, so it was a lot of status. So I thought, when I was in my younger days, I was very enamored by the concept of power and status and influence. And I studied that in psychology as well, like what made one person more influential than another. And so I just thought, wow, the written word and magazines and communicating and being the person who decides stuff, I thought that was very powerful. And when I started my magazine, I got to meet Jan Wenner and Graydon Carter, the editors and publishers of Rolling Stone and Vanity Fair, separately. And they both taught me a lot about magazine publishing in just a few meetings I had with both of them, and they were really helpful to me. Again, sort of like why I try to be super helpful now is because I got to meet Jan Wenner in the first year of my magazine and Graydon Carter in the first year of my magazine and get advice from them.
Amazing.
Yeah, just by hustling, and it was kind of cool. And at that time, the internet was so new that everybody wanted to talk about it. It'd be like today, in 2013, if you said like, yeah, I run the largest Bitcoin thing, or I know about Bitcoin, people are like, you know about Bitcoin? Can you come over for lunch, right? So, but 100 times that. Like the internet everybody thought was going to change everything, and everybody thought correctly. So if you had just 6 months more knowledge than the next person, you were a genius. And I was really reveled in that. Like, wow, I am sought after, and people want to talk to me. And, it's just when you come from nothing, when you come from these sort of meager backgrounds, the fact that I was getting meetings or could get into a party, like the fact that I could, now that I look on it, it was kind of cheesy, but I used to carry a copy of Paper Magazine in my bag, in my backpack, in my messenger bag, And when I would go to a restaurant or a party or try to get into something in Soho, I'd say I work for Paper Magazine, and they'd say, "Can you prove that?" And I didn't have business cards because nobody had business cards. I just take out the magazine and I point, "Look, Jason Calacanis," and I'd show them my driver's license.
No Google, no LinkedIn. So
no, yeah, I would literally show them the magazine, and they would have my picture in it too. So they were like, "Oh, that's super cool." But the internet, "Oh, you do the internet?" And then they let me into this cool party with a bunch of supermodels.
So no business, no money. Well, money wasn't your motivation. It was to be connected to.
Money was definitely a motivation. I mean, I was broke. I mean, I did the internet stuff. When I did networking in order to pay for Fordham for college and to pay for my existence because my parents had no money. So there was a lot of necessity in the technology stuff. But I did the writing for Paper Magazine not as a career choice. I wasn't trying to work as a journalist. I wanted to have influence. I wanted to work for Paper Magazine. I thought that was super cool. Like for me, that was like just mind-blowing that I was written. I mean, I would go to the newsstand. I would literally go to the newsstand to open up the magazine and see my picture in it. Cool. And that was mind-blowing to me.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, for a 22 or 23-year-old kid, yeah, that's pretty dope.
Well, the barriers of entry back then is to be published or a lot greater than it is today.
There was no, you either you were anointed or you're not.
And so you had a great run. 5 years, 6 years, for Silicon Valley Reporter, when I launched the magazine, I had a great run. It went to $11.6 million in revenue the top 70
year.
70 people,
yeah.
You threw the hottest parties.
Yeah, I was known for throwing the biggest parties. I basically really studied influence, and I learned a little bit of it from Paper Magazine. David Hershkovitz and Kim over there mentored me without knowing it, but I saw that when they threw the parties and that there was that velvet rope and who could get in and who couldn't and who was on the cover of the magazine and who was on the cover of Rolling Stone. It really sort of gave me a complete understanding of who accumulates power. And why. And if you get to pick, if you throw the party and you get to work the door and you get to pick who's on stage and you get to pick who's on the program and you get to pick who's on the cover of the magazine, these are very powerful things. And I realized, wow, for those entrepreneurs, being on the cover of the magazine was the pinnacle of their careers. Just like for me, being in the back of Paper Magazine and one of the last 10 pages as a columnist was one of my peaks, you know? So forget about being on the cover. And I got to put 10 people on the cover, and that's true power. You know, that at the time, that was kind of the pinnacle of power, was people would go to the newsstand to get their information. So if your picture was on one of those magazines, you were famous. That's it. I mean, it was very simple. If you're on the cover of a magazine, you're famous. It's not like today. If you're on the cover of a magazine today, people are like, yeah, well, interesting. What I don't read magazines, but okay. But 20 years ago, it was the peak.
Now, .com had a bubble.
Yeah.
The inventory of stories, dried up. You had to lay off a lot of people.
Everybody.
And so basically, you felt the pain.
Yeah.
And what was the best learning experience from that of that event? Is there one?
Yeah, sure.
Because I think you learn more.
The best time to sell is too early, not too late.
Well, you learned that at a weblog?
Well, I sold. Yeah, I mean, I sold too early, right, and it set me up for life. So I wish I had sold too early at This Week in Startups. Then I probably would have gone a little bit longer at Weblogs Inc. But Weblogs Inc. gives me the ability to be long for Inside.com, Mahalo, Launch, and other things. So I do think when you have the chance to sell, it's always a great idea to take a win. And back then, it was kind of binary. Either you sold or you didn't. Now you have this sort of secondary market where you can be a founder and sell half your shares or sell 10% of your shares, 20% of your shares, and be set for life. So if you have something that's sort of in the process of becoming a hit. So that's a good innovation. But the thing I learned was sell early. And number two, I think, is when you are on that downward trend, it's generally not going to reverse itself. So you have to take as quick action as possible. And so I did layoffs, like 4 sets of layoffs, 10 or 15 people each time. And I should have just said, you know what? This is how much revenue is coming in. This is how much revenue is coming in. This is how much we're spending. Just get that within 10 or 20%. 20% so that we're going to live to fight another day. But nobody really knew how bad the dot-com boom was. And it was so high that nobody could ever imagine that it would go down 98%, which is what happened. I mean, our revenue went down 98%. We were a magazine about the internet, and all the internet companies went out of business except for 2% of them. It was brutal. And then 9/11 happened, which made it like even a bigger downer because, after 9/11, there was just a year of people in such shock in New York that nobody spent any money, nobody did anything. Everybody was on a complete pause while we figured out when the next attack was coming. And so when you look back on that sort of double whammy, the fact that I was able to save any jobs or land the plane safely at Dow Jones was great for me.
That's great.
Yeah.
And now you started your next company, Weblogs.
Yeah.
With Brian,
Brian
high school
Alvey,
friend.
yeah, high school friend.
You know,
who had worked for me at Silicon Valley Reporter.
Now, partners are really kind of a unique value, right? And you were able to have someone that you trusted, you grew up with. Do you have any advice, though? People are not as lucky as you to have a high school friend that has the skills that complemented you into the next journey on partnerships. So finding one, picking one. Obviously, you had Michael Arrington. You had a partnership there that turned. So can you just talk about what your best takeaways on picking a partner or founder?
Yeah. I'm the kind of guy who probably doesn't need a partner. And probably shouldn't have partners because I'm, especially not at this age and this level of experience, because I know exactly what I want to do. And it's better for me not to have anybody sort of getting in the way of that. And that's with partners, you're going to have to decide stuff together. And I think Weblogs Inc., that was fine, but with Brian, I had to convince him to co-found the company. It wasn't like he wanted to do it. I had to push him very hard. I mean, it was multiple meetings hey, we have to do this. It's going to be big. And he had to convince his wife, and he took a second mortgage. So I give him all the credit in the world. But he was a reluctant co-founder. It was a lot of convincing, but he was an equal co-founder nonetheless. I mean, he's equally responsible for the success. So while I was leading the charge, he put in as much effort, and at times more probably, and so he gets equal credit for it. But in your 20s, I think it can be a good balancing kind of thing because you learn to work with other people and you have redundancy. I don't think it's a problem. I do think some people get a little obsessed that they have to have one. I don't think you have to have one. There's a sort of idea now that you have to have one and that the teams that really succeed have co-founders. That's not actually completely accurate. And, I think that with young people, they like to have co-founders. I think sometimes the VCs like to have it because it gives them redundancy. So I think for VCs and angel investors, they like the idea for co-founders because it makes for a stronger building, right? It's a stronger foundation.
So when you invest, do you look in teams and partnerships?
No. Doesn't matter to me.
Okay.
I mean, I do care about the team, but I don't care if it's a single founder or two founders or three founders. I do think that a lot of times when there's 3 or 4 or 5 founders, it's just a little bit too much dilution of responsibility. So probably the right number is 1, 2, or 3. But it does give you great redundancy, right? So if one person is just burnt out and they, or have a nervous breakdown, or they decide, they don't want to do it anymore, you have the backup. So it's great redundancy, I think, for a startup. So it's probably more optimal to have a co-founder. But that doesn't mean it can't succeed with just one. And a lot of times I think one co-founder could mute the other. So there's no right answer in that. I wish I could just say have one. It's what's the right answer for you?
Sure.
And if you have a singular vision and you know what you want to do, I like the idea of hey, we're going to do what I want to do. It's my company. It's my vision, but you're all going to play a very meaningful role, and you're going to have autonomy, and you're going to have the ability to execute on what you do. But at the end of the day, somebody needs to make a decision. And what I find is a lot of times the ball lands right between the two outfielders, right? And then you got a real problem, who's going to be in charge? So it's a very personal thing. And I think it's a different answer for different points in life,
How did you meet Michael?
Mike Arrington?
Yeah.
I don't remember exactly, but I think
How did that?
It must have been at some party or something. So he was, I think, a very big fan of Engadget and blogging, obviously. So I was probably 2 years ahead of him, and he had seen me sell to AOL. So I think he was kind of like, "How did you do it?" kind of thing, because at that time we had pioneered it. So he had started probably just slightly after us as a single, person. But yeah, at some party.
And what was the take? Let me phrase that. What would be a better learning experience from that relationship that you could, that someone watching this could glean?
Yeah, I think sometimes people forgive bad behavior with talent, right? So, or sometimes people. Talent will forgive a lot of bad behavior. Now, I'm not going to say exactly what Mike's bad behavior is, because that's all being sorted out. But, just in terms of, he wasn't particularly nice to people, just in how he went about every aspect of his life. So he was just kind of a jerk, right? I mean, and people have accused me of being a jerk, but some people say, there's a difference between being sort of a sadistic or, really mean jerk and like maybe having a strong opinion. And I think sometimes he tipped over a little bit too hard, and there were a lot of warning signs there. But you never know. Like he could just as easily have been a little bit gruff and, had a heart of gold. So you don't actually know. And I think when you do know, life is short. You got to move on and pursue your own vision. And so what I learned from that whole experience of having a partner and having the partner screw you over, in my opinion, he might have a different opinion, I'm sure he does, is you have to know that it's not working and move on and understand that you're going to be more successful without that person, right? So once we broke up, I did the launch festival with, 100% distance from him, and it became 10 times more filled with joy, 10 times more rewarding for me, 10 times more rewarding for the companies involved, and just a much bigger and better event, right? So I think sometimes when you're in something that's slightly dysfunctional, when you don't realize it, and then when you get out of it, it gets even much better. So, you can't beat yourself up for trying a partnership. And it was a very successful partnership on a financial basis. It was a very successful partnership on a quality of product basis. But once I got out of the relationship, it got a lot better too. So I really think you have to work with people you really, really, really respect and who treat people well. If you don't treat people well, it's sort of, it's building startups is a full contact sport. So I don't think you have to lower your standards. I mean, I'm a high standards kind of guy. I'm a high energy guy. I push people hard. I push myself hard. But at the end of the day, if you go through the war together and you feel good about it, that's one thing. But if everybody feels bad about it and you're, collecting enemies, and that's not good.
So there's obviously a big price to pay being a founder, starting a company in general. Yeah. Obviously, in the last year, there's been a lot of talk about the pressures on founders.
Yeah, sure. Jody Sherman killing himself.
I know that you've talked about that a lot. And how's being a founder affected you on a personal level as far as your relationships and the toll? Because obviously, the DNA, you need to be able to fight through those pains.
Yeah.
Can you just maybe talk about how that affected you?
I think I was pretty lucky because I grew up in a very full contact sort of childhood in Brooklyn, to put it lightly. So having, grown up in a bar basically with an assortment of characters, like I grew up around mafiosa guys and bookies and drug dealers and saw fights with tire irons and guns and all kinds of madness. And so when you grow up in that level of intensity, and I'm not saying I grew up in a war zone in, Somalia or something, so there's people who have it much worse, or I didn't grow up in poverty like people in India, but I did grow up in a violent, rough and tumble environment, a bar, essentially. I worked in a bar from the age of 8 or 9 years old and spent Friday and Saturday night at the age of 10, 11, 12 for my entire youth in a bar. It's like, I can't say that building websites and magazines was so hard that it compared to that, Like there was no risk of physical harm or, that level of insanity. So I felt like my childhood is, although I wouldn't wish it on my daughter, I actually kind of own it now, and I kind of cherish it in a weird way because I survived it, although I don't think it's the right one for a child to grow through. So I don't think being an entrepreneur was that hard for me, to be honest. Not psychologically. There were moments when it was sort of a bummer. I was getting beat up, but I kind of always liked the taste of blood in my mouth. I kind of liked, fighting the good fight, and I remember instances from my childhood of getting punched square in the face and getting back up. I like getting back up.
Entrepreneurship. Yeah,
I kind of liked the fight. And so I have that fight in me, so it doesn't really affect me. And in fact, I think it's, why I'm attracted to something like poker as well and risk-taking. And we were talking before about a poker game I was in. I was down 80% and fought my way back to 180%. And that, for me, is like one of those great peak experiences. I like being down. In fact, when I'm gambling and I'm playing cards, it's more rewarding for me to be stuck $5,000 and be even than to win $5,000 playing cards. That doesn't. I know that will not make sense to people. People say, well, wouldn't you rather just make $5,000 than make back the $5,000 that you lost in the same session and come back? There's something about playing when you're down. And I think probably basketball players or anybody who's in a competitive sport probably feels this as well. Oh, you're down 5,000, or you're down 10 points, and it's the fourth quarter, and then it's Michael Jordan time, then it's Carmelo Anthony time, then it's Kobe time, right? Like that's when you really get tested. And so I think I think after the breakup with Mike Arrington, when I did the launch festival, I had something to prove there. Like, hey, I've got to make it on my own without the TechCrunch brand, and we did, and we made it 3 times bigger, and the companies have been fantastic, and it's a much better conference than Disrupt, and it's 1,000 times better than Demo. It's twice as good as Disrupt, and we do a lot more good in the world. And we had 5,800 people come, 5,000 of them come for free, and all these companies benefited. Like, super proud of that, and that came out of me getting my ass kicked. And then Mahalo, the Panda update, took me from a very successful company with over 100 employees, close to $10 million a year in revenue, and goes away overnight when Google redoes their Panda search algorithm. And so I got to figure out a new business. So I try video, I try apps, and then inside.com. And now I am so locked into that vision and performing with a team at such a high level that I know I absolutely am certain that inside.com will be the best product of my career. It'll make everything else I've done in my career seem like, oh, well, that was like the warm-up for inside.com.
What is your vision for Inside as far as a company?
September 1st.
September 1st.
That's when the vision will be revealed.
Oh.
Yeah. I'm not talking about what it is exactly right now. But I do know that it will be the best product I ever make in my career. Like, and I think that's the clarity that happens. Like, when you're in the zone. But in order to get in the zone sometimes, you have to fight through the hard times, right? So that's really, I think, the lesson of entrepreneurship. And so in terms of your class and your classmates and talking about entrepreneurship, the darkest hours before the dawn, when you're on the mat and you got the taste of blood in your mouth and you just like the world is spinning because you just got clocked, that means you're going to about to get up, wipe the spit from your mouth, and you're going to win the fight because you've now had the wake-up call. You're now ready to engage, right? And it's like, that's the tenacity. That's what entrepreneurship is about. Anybody can start anything. It doesn't take anything to start anything. Right now, you and I could say, we're going to build the best laptop in the world. And we could come up with 20 ideas for the best laptop. We could hire a designer to make a bunch of beautiful designs. Means nothing until that physical product manifests itself and the customer puts their hands on it, and it's a win. So many people start. And you know what? Then it starts getting hard. And then that's when you find out if you're an entrepreneur or not. People who start companies are not entrepreneurs. People who fight through the failure and the roadblocks, those are entrepreneurs. And so I think that's one of the misconceptions in the market now is anybody can be an entrepreneur. Yeah, that might be true. Anybody can try to be an entrepreneur. But for me, you're an entrepreneur when you fight through the failure, you fight through the hardship, and then you get to the finish line. That's what it's about. It's a marathon. And I think a lot of people are in the 5th or 6th or 7th or 8th or 9th or 10th mile of the marathon, and they feel great. They haven't hit the wall yet. There's always a wall. I know so few entrepreneurs who just hit it on their first shot. It's like Zuckerberg, and that's it. Maybe Bill Gates. Like, there's been like 2 in the history of all this. I mean, look at Steve Jobs, and he had to, what a cross he had to bear. He had to leave his own company, get fired, have Next, build a superior product in Next, absolutely fail, be brought back to a failure of a company that was going to get bought by Larry Ellison, and then rebuild it from the ground up and have the greatest run ever, and then get cancer, and then have to fight through cancer. I mean, holy shit, did that guy have to really go through a lot to get to success, right? And so that's entrepreneurship for me, is when you're really down in that dark place. And it's easy enough to get through, I think, because all you have to do is not quit.
Quit or die?
Well, it's basically like, it's so easy to quit, right? Like, I saw this TV show about the Navy SEALs. And at Camp Pendleton, whatever it is, it's down south here in San Diego, they have like the Navy, the SEALs, and they're training. And there's a bell in the middle of their housing unit. And whenever you want to quit, you walk up and ring the bell. And they put the bell there just to psychologically fuck with people, I think. That you're only that one ding away from giving up. But you know what? It's your choice to ding it. You don't ever have to even recognize that the bell's there. The bell to you could not exist, right? And I think for a guy like me, there's no bell. There's no checking out of this. This is who I am. I make shit. I work hard. I put my head down. I try to make stuff. 1 out of 3 times I get it right. And so people say, oh, you're such a great entrepreneur. And you know what? Statistically, I'm not. The difference between me and a lot of other entrepreneurs is I never gave up. I never stopped working. I just kept trying and trying and trying and trying and trying. And then 1 or 2 things hit. And then people have a signal, an attribution theory that is absolutely backwards. So they look and they say, oh, you won. You must be brilliant. And it's like, well, I lost all those other times, right? And so it's almost like people in poker who they sit down at a poker table, they win a big hand, and they think they're a great player. And they win a great hand against a great player, they think they're a big player. Well, you know what? Play 1,000 hands against that person, and then we'll see if you're a great player, right? That's when you start to figure out who's a good player. Not, oh, I beat them this one session, or I beat them this one hand, but over 1,000 hands, how did you do, right? And so I'm just playing out those hands, I guess, and if you keep going, you're going to figure it out. And that's what entrepreneurship is. It's just who's got the will, who's got the resolve, who's got the resiliency. That's all entrepreneurship is resiliency.
But I also think that success leaves clues, and people, as you've mentioned, the people that influence your life that help connect those dots a little bit faster.
Yeah, those clues do nothing for you if you give up.
And you have to connect. Who were the big
No, I know,
mentors?
but those clues don't matter. I mean, listen, there's a lot of clues. There's a lot of books. You know, there's a lot of case studies at Harvard. We could talk all day long about all the things that could possibly go right, could possibly go wrong. But if you're not willing to sit there and have 5 or 6 or 7 things that the advice said should have gone well, but they went wrong. So you read all the advice, you took all the advice, you read all the books, you got the MBA, you got this, you got that, and 7 times in a row, when you should have won the hand, you lost. And now you're on tilt. And now you've lost 7 hands in a row. You've lost, and you were supposed to win them. And certainly you're supposed to win 4 of the 7 or 3 of the 7 or at least 2 or even 1.
Right.
Can you mentally get through the fact that you've had 7 times the roulette wheel came up red and you bet 7 times on black? That's what it's about. That's the gamble.
Would you want your daughter to be an entrepreneur?
Sure, of course.
Would you want her
control
to
your destiny.
Would you want her to marry an entrepreneur?
Sure, why not? Yeah. Whatever makes her happy and loves her. I mean, listen, I think that there's this idea that entrepreneurship, you have to sacrifice your life and stuff like that. I have a great life. I see my daughter every morning. I see her every night or almost every night. I travel a little bit. I get to take vacations. You do have to give up a lot and work hard at times, but then you could also play hard and take really long vacations or, have the afternoon off. So that's just a personal choice and style thing that I think it's a little bit overblown. And some people can handle the pressure and some people can't, and you've got to understand your own psychology. So if you don't understand your own psychology and how you deal with stress, then, it could be really hard. And I think that's why some people crack.
I think poker is a really good game to understand yourself. You have to be honest where you are in the hand.
Yep.
Sometimes you mentioned before we started is that you just need something to work with and you could outplay someone. But if you don't, you have to be honest where you are with the hand. And sometimes you have to fold them and sometimes you have to push through. And that's where the experience comes in. So with experience, Mark Cuban was one of your first angel investors at Weblogs. And obviously that
only investor.
He was the only.
Yeah.
And so
first and only.
So how did you meet Mark? And what was that?
I was a journalist.
You were a journalist.
And I wrote about broadcast.com, and I wrote something negative that it wasn't worth $1 billion. And I met him in the lobby of the NASDAQ, and we had a fight over it in the lobby of NASDAQ, and then we had a drink, and then we became friends. And when he would come, after he bought the Mavericks in the early part of the turn of the millennium, I would email him and say, hey, are you going to be at the game? He said, yeah. I said, I'll come down and shake your hand. And I would just come down and say hi to him. We'd shoot the shit. Then when I was starting Weblogs Inc., I emailed him and I said, blogs are going to be big. I'm starting a company. I'm raising $200,000. Do you want to put $100,000 in for 5%? And he said, yes. And then Yossi Vardy was going to put the other one in. Then Yossi Vardy dropped out because of some structural issues in the corporation. And then Mark said, I'll take the other 100,000. And then he said, I'll take another 100,000. So we own 15% of the company. So he put in 300.
That's great.
And he got out 15 times that. So he did pretty well.
What was the best advice that...
Sales solves everything.
Revenue.
Sales solves everything.
Yeah. And you
can't go out of business if you're making money.
Okay.
And survival is what entrepreneurship is about.
And what was his worst advice that he's given you?
worst advice?
From web blogs.
Yeah, I'm thinking back to that. I don't think he had much advice, bad advice, actually. And he's not the kind of guy who's going to give you advice and say, if you don't take this, it's a disaster, you're going to fail. He's like, this is what he's kind of humble about that, like, hey, this is what I've learned. And so he said at one point, he's like, let's make sure we don't drown in opportunity. Like, what's going to scale about this business? And you're going to get a lot of opportunities. Just don't drown in. I used to write him long emails. What should I do? What should I do about this? What should I do about that? And he would write me long emails back. So he was a great mentor. I would say of almost anybody, he's probably the best. Because I think he also realizes like what made him successful at that time isn't necessarily what works today, and he doesn't know the entire situation, but he does know the fundamentals really well, and he does care. I think that shows on Shark Tank now when you see him on there, is that he actually does really care. He's got a big heart.
And now you are angel investing. You are on that side of the table. What are you looking for investments and the teams that you're looking to back?
Obviously, you want somebody who's passionate about it, and who has just a wild amount of knowledge and about the vertical and a market and a clever execution. So, I mean, it's a lot of different pieces. I have a lot of things I look for. So, I'm a bit of a design snob. I think design matters. I think that the world makes a lot of decisions today based on design, which just 10 years ago they didn't. But today, if it's not beautiful and it's not gorgeous and it's not buttery and awesomely delicious and stunning, and you don't absolutely love it with your eyes, then people are not going to be so interested in it. And somebody's going to come out with something that people do love with their eyes, and they do, desire because it's so beautiful, in addition to its function. So I think design matters. I think brand names matter. I think your knowledge of the market matters. I think your ability to iterate matters. Your ability to listen matters. Your ability to not listen at times matters. I mean, it's a lot of things. I think there's a lot of things that I look for as signs to not invest. And so if somebody comes in and they just can't get design right, or they can't get the product right, if you can't get the product right and you're meeting with me, then we got a problem. If you're a talker, not a doer. So I like to see progress on the idea. So even when I'm working on my own ideas, I'm constantly trying to make progress. On This Week in Startups, I'm constantly trying to make progress. Get better guests, right? Get better microphones, get better video quality, get better at our YouTube channel, get better at our email. So if you're not getting better in the process when I'm getting to know you in the 3, 6, 12 months of deciding if I'm going to invest or not, then we got a serious problem, right? So, and I think I need things that are going to have a potential to be $1 billion business, right? Because if I'm going to be putting $25,000, $50,000 into 50 different things, you can start to do the math on the portfolio. If I'm going to put $2 million to work, I need one of these to get a huge hit, a huge return on, or else it's not going to work. And I have that with Uber and some others, but you basically singles and doubles, doubling your money, tripling your money, those are great over 7 years. That's not the end of the world, but you could do that in the stock market probably. So you need to have some outliers that are huge, and obviously you're going to have a lot of losses, a lot of zeros. So I'm chalking up some zeros now because I've been doing it for 3 or 4 years, and I'm chalking up a lot of just get your money back. So I would have done better putting it in, a mutual fund or bonds or the stock market. So, now I'm starting to actually learn, you do need to invest in 30 companies and get one that returns like an Uber.
So venture capitalists and angels, they're going for the big home runs. They're swinging for the fences.
Yep.
I've seen some pitches that have received a couple $1 million in funding, and they can't answer some of the most fundamental business questions. As a business student, it drives me crazy. But with that said, the market and the opportunity is so big. Do you think the easy access to money is actually liquidate your the value of the companies getting funded are lower, or you're just throwing spaghetti at the wall and you're seeing what sticks?
Yeah, I mean, the cost of starting a company is very low now, right? So you can probably get a product into market for $50 or $100 or $200,000 and see if anybody likes it or if it turned out well, as opposed to $2 or $3 million and previously $10 or $20 million. So now that we're spending 1% as much putting a product into market, $50,000 instead of $5 million, what's the cost? Who cares? Throw spaghetti at the wall. It's okay. And then sometimes you see outliers. People put a bunch of money into something like Color and it doesn't work out. But Color, which Sequoia, which is an investor in ours, put $40 million into, and I don't know all the details. They bet on an entrepreneur who's had major exits, sold companies to Apple, had a great idea. They put a bunch of money in. It didn't work out. Some money got back to investors. You're taking risk. And so people don't understand the concept of moonshots, right? And so if you are making bets in order to get 1,000 or 10,000% return on one in your career, and the other 100 you do in your career as a venture capitalist, you expect to return, on average 2, 3, 4, 5%, or 1% even, to double your money. But you're hoping you get Facebook or Twitter or Dropbox or Yammer, something that goes 1,000x or 10,000x for you. That's what they're doing. So they're just trying to turn $1 million investment into $1 billion one. Like, that's the name of the game.
No, I get that.
Yeah.
It's just
So you can't let that worry you. And like a lot of times entrepreneurs get a little obsessed about what everybody else is doing. Well, if it's that easy for those people with their dumb ideas to get money, don't sweat that. Go raise twice as much for your brilliant idea and execute.
Now, with that said, you're in LA.
Yeah.
You've been in LA for a long time.
10 years.
Monitoring Silicon Valley, the tech startups, but
Yeah.
you're here. Why do you call LA home?
I met my wife out here, and she likes living out here.
Smart man.
That's it.
All right. Now,
But I do love living here, and it's been a great place. But I may move up to the Valley. I may move back to New York at some point. So I'm not really. It just happened to be that I was spending a lot of time in San Francisco after I sold my first company to Dow Jones, and I lost my lease on my loft in New York, and I fell in love with my wife, and we got married. So I spent some time out here, and I've always loved it out here. I've had an apartment out here for a couple of years before I actually moved out here. I was bi-coastal, and it's a great place to run a company and all that kind of stuff. Like, this idea that great companies can't be built outside the Valley is obviously wrong. New York is crushing it, obviously, and LA is doing much better now. I think there's actually stuff happening here. So I think that's a little overblown. If I was starting my career over again, I would absolutely have moved right to the Valley immediately, because it does get a lot easier, and I probably would have been at one of those companies like Netscape or something. So next time around, next life, just go there. But if you're an entrepreneur, I would say just go to New York or San Francisco equal, and then go to LA, Austin, or Seattle and Boston as your second choice.
what's your opinion about incubators?
Fantastic.
Obviously, we have ours in
Pick
Los
them wisely.
Angeles.
Yeah.
They're awesome, but
Well, I mean, listen, as a first-time entrepreneur, to be able to go somewhere and get money and advice and office space and give up a couple of points, 6 points or 10 points of your company, I mean, it's basically a dog and pony show. You get out, you're going to get investors, hopefully. It's like a level of anointing. You're basically, those people running the accelerators are going to shine and polish your idea up to the point at which you can raise more money so that their 6% or 10% interest becomes worth something. So it's a bit of a system. I wouldn't say like a Ponzi scheme, but it's a system. So you're an entrepreneur and your product is like a 4 out of 10. You come to my incubator, we meet for 10 weeks for 1 day, for half a day a week, and I get 6% of your company, and then you go work the next 7 years on it, and I own 6% of you for 7 years, and then all I did was work 10 or 12 weeks and put in, 15 grand. I wouldn't say it's a scam, but it's a hell of a deal for the accelerators. I think the accelerators are getting a fantastic deal. Now, if you're a nobody entrepreneur and it's great for you and you like the association affiliation, you're going to learn stuff, but I do think it's a heck of a deal for the accelerators. I don't understand how somebody deserves 6% of your company for 10 weeks of work. That's a lot. Somebody might come to work to you for 5 years and get 1%, 2%, but somebody does 10 weeks of work and gets 6%. I think it's a ripoff.
Now, with that said, you hustle and you made your own network. I think the incubators, they sell their network and as far as value.
Yeah.
And so hopefully they speed up the failure rate or the success rate. And those both are very successful.
Yeah,
useful.
I think that's right. I mean, listen, if you're coming out of Y Combinator or Techstars, those two are going to provide a lot of value. So I think giving up 6% to those kind of folks is fine. I think for some of the newer ones, it's a little bit more like, what exactly are they providing in those 10 weeks? Now, Y Combinator, yeah, you go on demo day Y Combinator. But it's also, to a certain extent, I think Y Combinators become a little bit like Harvard. They select the best, so then they seem like they're the best, and so then people want to go there. So they've earned that, but it does become a little bit of a virtuous cycle. It's like a self-propagating cycle. So, I've seen stuff come out of Y Combinator that's not very good, and I've seen stuff come out of there that's extraordinary. So I think you have to really think about it. But as an entrepreneur, you're not going to only have one company. So, yeah, as a young entrepreneur, I can't see going into Y Combinator or Techstars as being a mistake. It's all upside.
Well, you talked
but
about
some of the other ones, not so sure about.
Okay.
Like the newer ones. So I wouldn't be the first person into an accelerator. And I would look at the last 2, 3, 4 years of an accelerator and say, who are the best 3 companies? And I would go talk to them and say, is it worth it? What did you specifically get out of it? I would do your diligence very hard.
And we talked, you recently had some articles about college. And
Yep.
the value of college and the $200,000.
You wasted your money on your MBA.
Oh, thank you.
I'm just screwing with you.
It's a
It
big
can't be that
investment.
expensive, right? USC, what was that, 50 grand a year? It's 100 grand?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah,
So you're you invested 100 in the MBA.
something like that.
Would you have done better to start a company with it?
It's all relative. So about,
That's not a yes or a no.
we'll see. I think history would tell.
Well, you're done now, right, with it? So
May, next month.
So you're done next month. When you look at it, should you have spent all that energy building 2 prototypes with a developer or designer?
I think that perhaps I wouldn't have went the same path to get the same idea. I have a customer that does 12,000 transactions that I'm looking to develop a platform for. And I would have not met them without this opportunity. So
Okay.
it's all relative to your point. Should you went to this party or that party? Well, if I met the right person at that one party,
So you're saying the network might make it worth it?
it's connecting the dots. We talked about
Yeah.
connecting the dots, and hopefully I could find a new pattern to get excited about. And so,
Yeah, so that's the thing is I'm not sure.
well, I think the value proposition for four-year institutions they're mistaken. You're selling the network. You're selling the football team. You're selling everything. Education there's so much information out there. So,
When you start selling the football team, I'm starting to think I should just watch it on TV and
Well, you're talking about
spend the money on starting a company, but who knows?
Well, you talk about Udacity and Stanford, and when he's giving education out there, and the intelligence level outside of Stanford is recognizable. It's out there. So the information is not is connecting and seeing the pictures and seeing the patterns faster. And I think having opportunities to meet people with the platform. If I was not a student and I had my own business, I reached out to you, you may or may not have the same response. So it's what I do with it. Like any Y Combinator or anything else is what I do with it. So that would
Okay.
be my takeaway on that.
Yeah, if you wind up building a $100 million company, the $100,000 in debt won't seem like much.
It's all
or
relative.
investment.
It's
Yeah.
all relative, right?
Yeah.
So you got This Week in Startup. It's going to have a new focus, new vision. What about culture, real quick? I think culture as an example of really defining companies. Zappos, Tony Hsieh. He does everything that MBAs should not do. He's ultimately inefficient. He's all about customer experience. Be on the phone, order pizzas at 10 o'clock at night for his customers because he wants to wow them. Everything that MBAs are taught not to do, per se. But that's what makes him great.
Yep.
So culture, how do
Is that what makes him great?
I think,
Or is that what makes him notable?
well, I think
Is
understanding.
that why you know him, or is that why his business was successful?
You look at the multiple why he was able to sell Zappos. I think it was for the culture. I don't think it was.
I don't think Amazon bought it for the culture necessarily.
They kept them separate.
No, I know that's the thing, but I don't know. I don't think if he had all that great culture and none of the success or half the success.
You have to have success.
Right. So I think this is another signaling issue. So
Let's talk about
Tony's quirky behavior, which is quite charming, and the love that everybody has for him at his company and all that kind of stuff, that's all great. But if they were losing, everybody would be pissed off. And if he had to lay people off or he had to lower salaries. So it all starts with having a functional business. Like, so people like to say, oh, culture first. That's true. But you could have all the culture in the world. You could do twice as good as Tony on culture. But if you don't have the execution and the product working and a business model and revenue, it's for naught. And so I see a lot of startups focusing very hard on culture and having nothing underneath it. And so while I think people didn't focus on culture, a lot of previously they just had success. With success, focusing on culture is important to maintain success. But focusing on culture ahead of like having a great product and winning, I don't know actually that's the right model.
He's selling shoes. He's selling a commodity that he doesn't design.
Yeah, but he did it for 10 years. And he built the largest brand, so, he had a massive head start and it took him 10 years and that business did well, but I don't know that it was the most successful business in the world. And so for a company like Facebook or Twitter, or Microsoft or whatever, it's a massively successful company to be like, wow, we have an incredible culture. And to do all these amazing culture exercises, or Google to have, all this food in 20% time, if they didn't have the AdSense juggernaut throwing off billions of dollars a quarter in profits, they wouldn't be able to just waste all that money on culture. And so that's really like, can you do culture when you're in the development of a product and you don't have revenue and profitability? It's a lot harder. And there's a lot more pain and suffering because you can't do things like, yeah, anybody can take unlimited vacation. I read that. Like, we have an unlimited vacation policy somewhere, somebody said. Or we want to pay you to go on vacation. Right. And it was like, really? Like, I think you're taking it a little too far.
Well, we talked about Michael and your time with TechCrunch. If the values of the person is conflicting, he might be super talented. I don't know him. I don't. Yeah. All right. But the Michael Jordan rule. How much talent overweighs the other side of things, right? Getting away with things.
Oh, in the technology industry, if you're successful, all other bad behavior is forgiven. It's an amoral industry.
It's results. But with that said,
it is absolutely amoral. If you win and you committed crimes to get there, people will forgive the crimes. If you got huge government fines of $10 or $20 million and a $10 million audit, a 10-year audit or a 20-year audit, people would still think you're a brilliant entrepreneur.
Well, Steve Jobs was, let's say, less than fantastic with the people that he worked with.
But just think about what I said. If you had the government give you a 20-year audit and a $10 million fine, do you think you'd be lauded by the technology community for privacy violations, or you would be chastised? Which one? And which one should you be?
Well, I think there's an argument with Facebook and privacy that I think if they love your product, to your point of it's on the plate. Do they love what's on the plate? If you're using
I know, analogy. But still, our industry does not care.
Is that a problem?
About that? Oh, for me?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess. Like, I kind of think, like, if you cheat and you get a huge government fine and you don't care about people's privacy, and gay students are outed because you think that you want your product to grow faster, and so you make it so anybody can be added to any group, and even without their permission, they get added to a group, and then all their parents see that they were just joined to the boys' men's gay choir at their college, which is exactly what happened, and a bunch of students got outed to their families without their knowledge. And maybe one of those students kills themselves, but that didn't happen in that case, but this kind of things do happen. Or you decide you're going to make a proximity social network like that one Scout or something it's called. Scout, or I can't remember the name of it.
Yeah, you talked about that, where people identify.
Yeah, and it's like you build a proximity network for 13-year-old boys and girls, and then they get raped by predators, and you put 13 and 14 and 15-year-old kids on a map for predators to find. That's just amoral or stupid. I think in that case it was stupid. It was just a bad idea.
It's a lot of things.
But then I think with Zuckerberg, some of the behavior is just like, he doesn't care. He thinks, so what? If I'm getting fines, it's funny because I've made so much money that paying a $10 or $20 million fine or settlement, who cares? I'm making billions of dollars. The company's worth $100 billion, and the shareholders are making all this money. They don't care. So I think actually our industry is amoral. It's growth and growth only that matters.
So when we talk about patents and talking about ideas versus execution and all these patent wars, first to file and protecting the new brains coming out and creating these amazing things, if they can't protect themselves, or there's so much infringement or patent litigation, is that a problem for the industry, the technology industry? Do you see?
Oh, the patent stuff is obviously a disaster, yeah.
How would you recommend, what would you say?
I think you have to have, like, if you file a patent, you have X amount of time to use it or lose it, and problem solved.
And do you think, is there any talk about some type of coalition or anything regarding?
Well, you're already seeing people like Rackspace countersuing, like the trolls, and you have the EFF involved, and you have people trying to find prior art together and putting out bounties. Like, if you find the prior art, I'll give you $10,000. So, people can abuse the system to a point until the people who are being disenfranchised by that system then stand up and fight against it. So you can screw, this portion of the population for X amount of time, and then they smarten up, and then they get together, and then they fight you. So I think that's what's happened with the patent trolls is they were slowly making a living off of just shaking people down for 5, 10, 50, 100 grand. But then they started going after startups, and they started going after big companies, and they started creating this insanity in the marketplace. And then they're breaking the system. If you break the system, then nobody wins. Then everybody's got to fight it to get the system back to stasis.
Right.
It's like the speed limit, right? Like, if everybody drives like a maniac and we could have no laws about how you drive. Seatbelts, speed limits, brakes, car inspections, emissions, driving drunk or under the influence. Like, we could have no rules. But at a certain point, you don't want to live in the society where there's no rules, and if everybody's getting killed from it and you're losing your friends to accidents, then you say, you know what, okay, I'm fine with giving up a little bit of I'm finally giving up some of my personal freedoms to have a safer roadway. That's the issue we have right now. Some people are speeding on the highway.
Do you have any perspective difference when you started weblogs from the time you went to AOL as far as Dig and being ideas versus execution? I think you were all about execution and doing something
Well, I had a new
better.
idea on top of Dig. I mean,
Of course.
Dig, my idea was to put editors on top of Dig, like to have the audience voting, but then having a series of editors on top of it, which is what other people have done too since then. So I thought we were pretty innovative. We got sort of tagged with copying Dig, which I think was a little unfair since Dig copied Delicious's, top list, and Delicious sort of was a copy of Slashdot, link aggregation. So everybody was sort of in the same zone. But, I picked a fight with Kevin over it to get publicity, so I can't complain if he fights the fight really well, which he did. And we're all both good friends now, so it's kind of funny.
Did your perspective change when you were under the umbrella of AOL as far as entrepreneurship in a different point of view?
No.
Right? There's a startup. No. So you were able to have.
I was only there for a year, and they left me, I didn't have to go to any meetings or do anything there. So I was just, running Weblogs Inc. barely, handing it off and barely working. So it was, I went to my office a total of 2 times in LA. I mean, I just worked on making sure Weblogs Inc. didn't crash during the transition and keeping them from fucking it up.
Obviously, Sequoia's has a huge brand and brilliant people. So you were there for a moment in time.
Yeah.
What was the
Entrepreneur
lure?
in residence,
What was the lure? And what was
it's the number one venture capital in the world. That was pretty good lure.
Yeah.
They invested in Google, Atari. They got the smartest people in the world, so that's a good lure.
Yeah.
Learning.
And why did you exit?
Well, I was there as an entrepreneur in residence, and so the eventuality is you're going to start a company and they're going to invest in it, which is what happened. So the concept of an entrepreneur in action or residence is you camp out for a little while, you come up with an idea, they invest in it. They don't have to invest in it, you don't have to take their money, but usually that's what happens. So I wasn't there as a partner.
Right.
I was there as an entrepreneur in residence.
So this week is now Mahalo's there.
Yeah, it's going to be called Inside.com. I'm sunsetting the Mahalo brand, so it's just going to be Inside.
Just Inside.
Yeah. I mean, the Mahalo brand still makes over $1 million a year, so I can't turn it off. But that how-to stuff is done well, but it's just a tough business now that there's no SEO. Yeah, it's not even pivoting. It's like I found another business over here that I'm more interested in, and I've got a corporate entity that's got millions of dollars in the bank and is high functioning in terms of a team, and we've got this base of revenue. So I see a bigger opportunity here, so I'm actually building another product inside of the same corporate entity.
Great.
But I actually just changed the name of the corporate entity to Inside.com.
Okay.
So Mahalo is a brand that Inside.com owns, just like we also own Hackaday and,
Okay.
a couple of other brands.
Now you have the educational kids launch coming up.
Yeah.
And obviously there's a huge passion to change a broken system.
Yeah.
Can you talk about where the origin of that passion is? Do you just see this as a nice
Well,
market,
one of the things I'm lucky about is because I do the show This Week in Startups and I do the conferences, I see all these entrepreneurs with passion and I get to piggyback on it. Like if I see a bunch of really smart people passionately tackling a space, I get to sort of jump in front of that parade and say, wow, this is a great thing we're doing here. I'd like to learn more. So I'm just learning in that space. I don't know it's a big opportunity in terms of investment. Education's been kind of a bust on an investment basis, but it's certainly fascinating, and I think lifelong learning is interesting. So I like watching these things. I'm interested in Bitcoin too. I'm interested in video. I'm interested in a lot of things, mobile. So I like to just follow the trends. I'm a junkie for it.
Nice.
Some people are NBA junkies, right? They have a team. I love the Knicks, and but I'll watch other storylines in the NBA. Like I'm interested in the Heat. I'm interested in the Lakers. I'm interested in OKC.
Yeah. Now so we got Knicks. What do you want your legacy to be when it's all done? What is?
Yeah, I haven't given that too much thought. I'm 42, so I don't want to give that too much thought. But I think if at the end of the day I build a bunch of products, media brands and products, and they some number of them outlive me, that'd be a pretty good run as a brand creator. So if I create some loved brands in the media space, because that's sort of what I like to do, that'd be great. If I inspire a lot of people who are team members for me and they go on to start their own companies and they have greatness, which is starting to happen now. A lot of the people who've worked for me have built very successful companies. If I invest in some of those companies that then do very well, that'd be fun too. And then most of all, just if I inspired a lot of entrepreneurship and people to create things and have better lives for themselves and their employees and their teams and for the people who use their products, boy, that would be great. I just want to have fun. It's human behavior is a pretty, you want to work with people who you respect. You want to build stuff. We're tool makers, right? And you'd like to win and have fun while doing it. I mean, I'm doing all those things, and I have done all those things. So I kind of feel like I've led a charmed life. In a way, I'm free rolling already. You know, like it's like sometimes if you were, you know, I'm free rolling.
That's all.
People can look it up in terms of I'm free rolling.
Well, Jason, thank you very much.
Well, thank you for being on the program. You're thanking me for being on the program. All right, we'll see you all next time on This Week in Not Startups, This Week in USC, MBA students. Is it a clever way to get me to invest in your company?
Well, that was another way to meet you.
Yeah, smart. See, I always think like this is like, if you can't figure out how to meet somebody, this is the perfect way. Like, hey, I want to interview you for my MBA, and now when you email and talk about your company, I'm going to be like, yeah, of course, I have to hear your company idea.
I look forward.
Well done. Well done. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Thank you.